The information in this video is for informational purposes only and was produced for a class project. The creator is not a medical professional. The student, faculty, and university do not guarantee the accuracy nor reliability of the content, nor should it be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have questions about a possible medical condition, please contact your physician or qualified healthcare provider. Never delay seeking treatment nor disregard the advice of a medical professional due to information you receive in this video. Hey everybody, I'm Elka. I'm going to be talking about the blue zones today. I originally wanted to do something about the link between diet and culture, and when I started researching, there's not a ton of stuff out there. So what I did find though were the blue zones, and I'd always heard about them, but I wasn't really sure what they were. So the more I started researching them, I just became fascinated. So what are the blue zones? There are 4 or 5, depending on the source, areas of the world with the highest number of centenarians. In 2004, Michel Poulain defined them as homogeneous geographical areas where the population share the same lifestyle and environment, and its longevity has been proved to be exceptionally high. And I feel like people have been talking about them, or I've been hearing about them for a really long time, but research is pretty recent. It technically started back in the 70s. Ancel Keys did what was known as the 7 countries studies, and he found that certain countries had a much higher incidence of heart disease, while other countries had a much lower incidence of heart disease. So based off of his findings in 1999, several people started researching Sardinia, and Sardinia was the first one because it was the first place where the number of centenarians was actually verifiable. So where are the blue zones? Well, Sardinia was the first one to be acknowledged, and then also there is Okinawa, Japan, Ikaria, Greece, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and again, depending on the source, some people consider Loma Linda, California, one of the blue zones. So what criteria makes up a blue zone? Dan Buettner, who has been studying these for years and was one of the first people to really talk about the blue zones, says that all of the people get a natural physical activity such as walking or gardening. They don't go to the gym and work out. They have a life purpose. In Okinawa, it's known as Ikigai, and in Nicoya, it's known as the Plan de Vida. And this goes beyond a career or a job. It's the life's purpose. You have a sense of meaning when you get up in the morning. All of the populations have significantly decreased stress levels. They follow the 80% rule, which is pretty popular right now. You only eat till you're 80% full instead of 100%. And in Okinawa, they have a mantra, Hara Hachi Hu, to just remind themselves to only eat till they're 80% full. These populations follow a mostly plant-based diet. They practice happy hour, and they have really strong bonds with family, friends, social circles, and a pretty strong faith. And what else do these places have in common? Well, Michel Poulain said that some of their commonalities were that they were all on the sea. Most of them were islands. They were all in mountainous regions, and that could affect individual behavior, such as physical activity. It could affect society. Mountainous societies tend to be quite a bit closer. And it could affect environment. Like maybe the air was clearer, there was less pollution up in the mountains. He also said that these areas were economically underdeveloped compared to the rest of their country, so they had a chance to preserve their traditions for longer than other areas of the country did. And there's no real class gradients. All societies have classes, but these societies tended to have much more equality among the population. And Hitchcock thought that positive psychology had a role to play. He was only specifically looking at Sardinia, but he found that the older people there had less depression, they had higher reported levels of self-perceived well-being, they had higher levels of preserved cognition, and they had higher levels of participation in leisure social activities. And he made another point that in Sardinia, and this is something in common throughout the Blue Zone cultures, older people are revered. It's an honor to be an elder in these societies. So, looking at some of the um, diets for these cultures, the Mediterranean diet, really popular right now. It's so this is the diet that would be followed in Sardinia, Italy, and in Icaria, Greece. It's a majority plant-based, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of whole grains. Most of the protein comes from seafood, nuts, and legumes. Very little animal products. Lots of healthy fats like olive oil and nuts. They drink wine every day. They have 1 to 2 glasses of wine every day, but it's always with food, it's always at a meal, and it's always with friends and family. And continuing on in the cultural aspects, they always have lots of friends, very close society, very close knit family. Makes me think of that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And in Greece, they have a word, diaete, which kind of sounds like diet in English, right? But in Greek, this goes way beyond just food. Um, this word, the literal translation is way of living. So they see all of this as a lifestyle. And some of the research on the Mediterranean diet, there was an editorial in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition that stated that the Mediterranean diet should be considered a lifestyle. Just eating the food by itself wasn't enough. You needed to have that psychological aspect to really help with longevity. And it's been found to be cardioprotective. It decreases the risk of metabolic syndrome. It reduces the risk of colorectal cancer. And the study that I found most interesting was from the Nurses Health Study. And this study spanned years following 4,676 middle-aged and older women, all nurses. And it found that those who had a greater adherence to the Mediterranean diet, that was significantly associated with longer telomere length. And telomeres are biomarkers of aging. Shorter telomere length is linked to shorter life expectancy and greater risk of chronic age-related diseases. These women who followed the Mediterranean diet had significantly lower levels of oxidative stress and inflammation in their bodies, and those are two of the main factors that shorten telomeres. The other one I was able to find a lot of information on was the Okinawa diet. It's mostly vegetables, really similar to the Mediterranean diet. Vegetables, whole grains. Their protein comes from soy products and seafood. Very, very minimal animal products. If they eat any meat, it's usually just a little bit of pork, and they have very little, if any, dairy. They drink lots of tea and a little bit of alcohol. And culturally, in Okinawa, they have these groups called moai. And these are groups of 5 to 8 individuals who are connected throughout their lifespan. And it's social support, best friends. It's really like an extended family, just again to support each other. And some of the information I found on the Okinawa diet, one study found that eating a diet that was high in carbs, such as grains and vegetables, and low in protein and fat, may increase lifespan. And another study found that Okinawans had significantly less oxidative stress, and the authors admitted that it was probably a combination of their lifestyle and diet. So there's these things going on right now called the Blue Zone Project Initiatives. It was created by Dan Buettner, trying to get that the health aspects of this into inland communities. So right now, the Blue Zone community projects consist of a town in Minnesota, several towns in California, and 10 communities in Iowa. And they are using specific lifestyle characteristics and diet to see if these things can affect other populations, not just the populations in Sardinia, Icaria, Okinawa, Nicoya. Um, there's not enough information yet. It hasn't been going on long enough to really have any feedback yet, but I think this is something really interesting to follow. And in conclusion, I believe that diet and lifestyle are really intimately intertwined. And these blue zones were just fascinating to me. And I feel like it really perfectly represented this. Just so interesting how it's not just diet that it can increase longevity, but that's not all it is. You need to have that lifestyle and all these other factors, and it's everything that comes together um, that really increases longevity. And one last point that I found really interesting was that when the outside world looks at these areas, they really only focus on the diet, whereas the people living in these areas attribute their longevity to their lifestyle, their community, their culture. They see it all as one. So, like I said, I found these super interesting, and I hope you learned something and found it interesting too. Here are my sources. I hope you can see them. And page 2. Thank you so much.